Now you can see the nervous system of planarian, right? Sweet. Okay, so here's the deal. We talked about this guy last time, how the nerves are basically set up like a ladder, and then you color them on a diagram. So we're going to move on. All right, planarian reproduction. We already watched the regeneration video. Basically, they have sexual and asexual reproduction both. And if you cut the planarian in half, it can regrow. So that would be an asexual reproduction. If somebody were to step on a rock in a lake, as you run into the lake and that rock crushed the planarian and cut him in half, he would swim away, regrow his tail, and life goes on. He's in good shape. Sexual reproduction is, of course, every planarian's hermaphrodite. So they'll mate with cross-fertilization with another individual. Sexual reproduction by yourself doesn't make any sense because you're not giving yourself any genetic diversity, right? You want the sperm from one planarian to get to the eggs of a different planarian, just like you want the pollen from one flower to get to the ova of another flower. That's the point, is the genetic diversity. So several fertilized eggs are put in a capsule and they are released into the water, where hopefully they will dock to a rock or a twig or some moss or some algae or whatever, and they'll eventually hatch, start eating organic debris with their gross little mouth that comes out of their pharynx, and yeah, they're ready to go. Life goes on, right? They live, they survive, and so critters that can do both asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction are in pretty good shape, okay? So, everybody feel okay about that? I see a few people writing, so I'm going to give this just a second. Okay, feel okay about it? As long as you know that they're do both asexual and sexual reproduction, and if they're hermaphrodites, you're gonna be okay. All right, so let's click on. And if you haven't written everything you need, the PowerPoint is on Edmodo in biology folders, so you can check those out too. Alrighty. So this is a fluke. I want to show you guys a fluke because they're so weird looking. That's a fluke, and that's a tapeworm. So left one's a fluke, right one's a tapeworm. So not all flatworms are parasitic. Certainly the planarian we talked about was not a parasite. He's just eating moss and algae. But the ones that get our attention and the ones that get our funding and research are oftentimes parasites, because when a parasite destroys a big chunk of the cattle industry or the sheep industry or the pork industry, it gets attention and financing, and that's how you learn more about these things, right? And so a parasite is a term you're almost all familiar with, but a parasite is anything that fastens itself to a host and absolutely needs the host for survival. Living in the Black Hills, you guys have probably had ticks on you in the summer. That's a parasite that's, of course, trying to get at your blood. You may have even seen a leech. If you've had leeches on your legs after swimming, leeches are after the same thing, going after blood. But these parasites are essentially not getting food from, microbes that they're eating or algae that they're eating. They're going to get food from the guts of a host by getting in the host, attaching to the host, and eating the host's food. I don't know if this show is still popular, but Parasites became very popular with this silly, over-dramatized show called Monsters Inside Me. Has anybody seen that? Thumbs up if you've seen Monsters Inside Me. Okay, a couple of thumbs. Okay, the show is still alive. Fantastic. So yes, it's very, very silly, but you get to see like flies come out of people and stuff like that, and so it was popular for a bit. So parasitic flatworms normally don't have much in the way of mobility. Parasitic flatworms basically have to be carried around by their host. They're dependent upon the cow walking around with them and pooping them out near the lake. And if the cow doesn't walk around with them or poop them out, then they can't move on their own. They must be moved. And so they're pretty much going to try to get near small intestines and just camp there. And that's about it. They do have a thick body covering to protect them. It's called a tegument. I don't care that you necessarily memorize the word tegument, but just kind of get the idea that like your stomach is a tough place to stay alive. Your stomach acid is a tough place to stay alive. Your small intestine is not that tough. Like it's pretty neutral, but there's a lot of enzymes that digest proteins, and these guys are made of proteins. So you don't want the enzymes to digest you. So they have a tough body covering so they can make it through the mouth, make it through the stomach acid, make it through the digestive enzymes in the small intestine, and then hang out there and eat the digested food without being themselves digested, which would destroy the whole point of them being in there. So they have a pretty thick skin, which is good for them. Some have suckers, some have hooks, some have both, but they need some way to get their gross little head stuck to that small intestine wall on their host and hang on and eat the host's food. And so the one that I showed you had both hooks and suckers, which is pretty cool. There's two big groups that get a lot of our attention, flukes and tapeworms. There's probably others that we don't know about yet, but I'm sure we'll find them eventually. Here's your tapeworm. What is this portion of the tapeworm called? You can unmute yourself if you got a guess. Or type in the chat box. Starts with an S.
The scolex.
Got it. Good answer. And what is just one little teeny tiny segment called here? Starts with a P. Everybody know it? Doesn't sound like it. No one's typing it in. Called a proglottid. Called a proglottid. So those are flukes and tapeworms. Next time we come back together, we're going to talk about flukes and tapeworms kind of one at a time. But with that packet, you probably got a pretty good idea of what's going on with them. So do you have any questions for me at all before we call it? Because we're about that 2:30 time frame, and I do want to be just sticking with that half-hour time frame that we want to hit. So any questions at all over this? Nope. Feel good about it? Okay, cool. Well, we will meet tomorrow, same time, same link.